Most of you know the old story about the astronaut who went far out into space and was asked on his return whether he had been to heaven and seen God. And he said yes.
Greetings, ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries, and sentient artificial intelligence. Join us on this journey to find the others. Because no matter where we find ourselves in this multiverse, the act of existing is all too familiar.
Guys? Is anybody out there? Hello?
The mushroom has a tremendous problem-solving ability.
Herbs are good for everything.
As we look across this great expanse and stare at the stars, we can't help but be reminded these lights, though we're seeing them all at the same time, happen across a multi-billion-year delta. Some of those fires burned millions of years ago, some billions, but all of them happened so we could experience them in this one singular moment.
They called us scouts. They called us seekers. They called us Hoosier. But we were destined to question everything.
I don't know about you, but as for me, the question has already been answered. Should we be here? Yes.
So I wanted to ring in the new year a little differently than my normal. It seems like, the New Year's party is always a time for everyone to cut loose and really imbibe in their favorite spirit. And but you kind of end up waking up on January 1st a little foggy, starting a new year hungover.
New year, new me.
It was actually like Alka-Seltzer had like a national holiday on New Year's Day. It was National Hangover Day. It was a big marketing
Humans
campaign.
are crazy.
Isn't that wild? And I thought, there's got to be a better way to get started. There's got to be a better way to start that. That real
Rip into
new
the new
year,
year.
new me thing.
It's bull crap.
So what I did, it's just another day on the calendar, right? But you know what? It's a nice little starting line. Let's try something out. So I decided that I was going to schedule a float. First thing, New Year's Day, 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Get my day kind of started right. And this is a couple years ago. And rather than go out and party and get all hazy and drunk, I was going to go inside. I was going to travel inside and think about what I wanted to do differently with my life and who I wanted to be.
Very noble of you.
There's some people talk of heroic doses of psilocybin, and I decided that I was really going to kind of test my comfort levels.
Explain that for the people. What's a heroic dose?
Well, Terrence McKenna always said it was 5 grams in silent darkness.
Woo, Nellyville.
5 dried grams.
An eighth is 3.5 grams, allegedly.
No, that's correct.
And
That's
typically,
math.
it's just
they
math.
teach that in school.
Okay, never mind.
And so
Just don't say how much it costs and what it is.
But that is roughly, a fairly good dose for someone who's never done it. You get around the 3 gram range.
That's a big boy.
It's going to change your life.
Or a big girl.
It's a life-changing dose for sure. But if you really want to make sure the medicine works, if you really want to get in there and explore your inner verse, you test those limits. And so I allegedly laid out, this has been years ago, 6 dried grams of the bluest psilocybe cubensis I've ever seen. Blue, almost black. And I took this, and I had prepared for weeks a playlist. I was watching my diet leading up to it, trying to really eat clean, fasted kind of the day of, all the way up until the day of.
You're an epic playlist guy too. So.
I put a lot. Thank you. I put a lot of thought into that.
Journeys.
I'm a firm believer in
Journeyer.
taking, and the thing is I've even had a buddy
a lot of
at
Journey
the end
songs.
says, "You've listened to this sober?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Man, that's love right there. You sitting through this sober to put this together for us." I'm like, "Thanks, man," because I put a lot of intention into it.
Well, Icaros, I don't know.
And so look
up Icaros if you haven't. That's a subplot for you.
There are medicine songs that are sung by different, ayahuasqueros, different, all the different healing plant ceremonies typically have a medicine man of sorts, a shaman, a leader who a lot of times they'll sing you through this. And if you focus on the music, it really helps you concentrate your thoughts more and more inward. And so
what does this leader do during the day for money? Quick Trip or something?
Oh, actually, I mean, a lot of times, I think a lot of these people are health professionals or yogis, or
they need money.
And they're kind of above it, just whatever it takes to get by. No. So anyway, I take this dose, and I do have a playlist laid out. It starts out with a very sweet sounding older woman. She's kind of whistling, very into this.
And that's what it sounds like a little bit sometimes.
And totally. And as
those
you, I'll tell you what else. I remember hearing it for the first time.
Wrong.
For the first time with no frame of reference, it did sound very odd to me, like listening to it sober. And then after I'd had an experience at an ayahuasca ceremony, like all of a sudden it became like the most beautiful song, and now when I hear it, I can actually go back into that space.
It's like Billy Joel for me.
Oh yeah, I can see that. You didn't start the fire for sure.
So bad song.
So it's I'm lying there. This playlist is bringing me through, and I have officially left my physical body to where I've basically dissipated into this oneness. Right, it's something that people with the experience can.
We're going to hear about that
too. And in that, just kind of do a lot of reading on this different stuff, people's different experiences. I love to hear people's trip stories, their journeys, and maybe what they brought back from it. And as I was floating in this ether, this black void, so
you're on mushrooms in a float tank?
No.
Okay.
The float tank is scheduled for the next day.
Okay,
so this is the day before. This is on New Year's Eve. This is how I was going to ring in.
So now you're disconnected, disassociated from your body.
Totally. I'm lying on my couch. I have this playing loud enough to where it is really the only sound in the room.
On my bows.
So
my bows.
I'm lying there, and I start to ask these questions. What is, tobacco is considered like the grandfather plant, right? And so it's brought into so many of these ceremonies as this helper, right? And I was like, what is the significance of this tobacco plant? And then all of a sudden, this plume of smoke just floats in front of me, or of just my eyes, basically, because I don't have a physical form here. So I just see this plume of smoke in this black void. And as the smoke starts to dissipate a little bit, it highlights this net, this web. Okay. And so basically, there wasn't an actual voice, but something was telling me, look into the web, right? So the smoke is highlighting these portals to these different dimensions. Okay. And so I look in.
Is it a voice or is it like just a feeling?
It's an understanding.
Yes.
It's a like, voice, but it's not Field of Dreams. Like it's something that is imploring you to do it, making you do it, but there's no actual, it's very much, we'll get to this.
Moonlight Graham.
So we get in there. So I peek in there and I realize that I can climb through these dimensions, and I end up in this room with like just a extremely long conference table of sorts, right? With
does it feel like your physical body's there, or do you know that it's just like a first person shooter?
I'm just taking it all in from almost, I'm in the room, but I'm just floating through the void. I'm just a set of eyes. I'm a fly on the wall.
Gotcha. It's not like you're actively, you can feel yourself moving.
And as but as I become more aware of it, then I become a part of it. I'm participating in it. And there is this and this is going to sound, like this is just what I saw. Okay. I don't know, subconscious stuff. This is weird, but there's definitely like this, reptilian kind of scary creature at the end of this table, like sitting at the head of the table. And the table is covered with just millions of insects. It's a really dark, low vibrating energy in this whole room.
Watching a Tool video, and maybe, and you just thought you were there.
These bugs are all just, they can't crawl fast enough. They're forming these lines to crawl towards this reptile who is just gorging on these insects and eating them. And I'm like, I'm frozen in horror, because that is the only existence that these little bugs know, is just to feed the machine, feed the animal at the end of the table. And they can't wait to get there. And as I start to question it, I'm like, I'm there. And one of the cockroaches or one of the insects turns its, focus.
How big are they? Are they
me.
real little? And
well, to me, like I mean, it's all in scale. It just looks like like a good sized beetle or something, And as I'm thinking about, oh my God, what a horrible existence. Like, what is this incarnation? Like, this is a dark place. I don't want to be here. He turns and he's like, buddy, don't worry about us. As it eats us, we become its thoughts. It's doing our bidding. And I'm like, okay. Like it freaks me out.
How are you going to respond to that?
You don't, right? So I'm like, I just want to get out of here.
You're like, prove it.
Just agree and walk away.
Prove it.
Plume of smoke.
Give him a little nod. Hey,
and I got you. I crawl out and I'm back in this void again, right? And well, that was pretty wild. Let's see what else we can come up with. Well, about this time,
are you actively under this ceremony with the Icaros going?
It's playing in the background.
Are you conscious of where you're trying to go, or are you just like, hey, take me on a journey. Where are we going to go?
Closer to the latter there.
Okay.
Where I'm just like, I'm kind of open to whatever comes to me.
You're not trying to control anything?
I'm just trying to listen, focus on the music, and let it lead me wherever it leads me. And it very much does correlate. So there's this song.
Was the music very freaky?
There's a song that comes to, actually at that part, it hadn't really gotten super well, it was a little
some
ominous.
Of the Icaros can get
it was
weird.
This was a little ominous, and I think you'll find a lot of times when there's a male.
How do you spell Icaros? I'm going to put it on
Icaros, and like you can look up shamanicos, or there's a few different ones. As the music changes, though, and I would agree with you. When a male is singing, it sounds a little more ominous. There's some bigger sounds versus when the gal is singing in the beginning, it's just her voice and whistling, and maybe a palm frond making a noise, so it's just kind of setting the rhythm.
Yeah.
As it progresses into this little bit heavier, more full music, the sound really starts really wrapping me up in it, right? And
synesthesia.
And all of a sudden, right, as I'm about to peer through this net again, a gong hits on the music. Boom. And I go, pew! I just skyrocket from where I was into this very, I'm going to say, Egyptian looking landscape, but it's not Egypt. The colors are super saturated. There's pinks and rose in the sky. There's two suns, and what appears to be this massive
Stargate.
This massive.
You went Stargate. You've seen that movie, right?
Parthenon structure. Stargate. Okay. Like it's.
I'm with you.
But here's the deal. With the steps into this Colosseum, this structure are 4 times bigger than me, right? And like there's really ornate, big, godlike statues that kind of surround the perimeter of this thing. And I'm just looking at these steps like, what kind of giant climbs these steps to get in there?
Oh.
And then the gong hits again. Boom. And the steps just go and they start to open. So now I can just walk in. They walk out to the side. There's just a split down the middle. And when I go in there, it's this hall, this infinite hall, okay, that is lined with, again, going back to the Egyptian analogy, like almost Sphinx-like characters. It made a lot of stuff make sense to me. They weren't Sphinxes. Like I wonder how much of this is like external input that I have stored in my memory from just seeing, the statue of the Sphinx and all of these different Egyptian gods, but they look different. They have a very unique, real look of something I've never seen before.
Are we talking like the Sphinx is kind of
it's a winged giant cat, but not so much the pharaoh head.
Were their faces cat-like? Like Or were they more
faces were
bird-like
more
with a-
their faces were actually more human-like, somewhere in between like a cat human chimera. Very like
sleepwalkers.
very much so. Very
Okay.
much, yeah, like kind of always
That movie's
morphing. Okay.
freaky, and I like it.
But as I'm sitting there, I'm but an ant. They're paying no attention to me. If you and I are having a conversation and this little ant is just crawling around along the ground right now, we
Are they
paying
wearing
it
like
no-
the shirtless, and are they having the
not? It's not really like kind of like they
Little
have that
different?
shape,
okay?
but it's just a little different than a
Okay,
sphinx. I
okay.
can't really explain it.
Gotcha.
The hall is infinite, and there's two suns in the background, and the sound that is permeating through every inch of the space is all I can. I think it's the voice of God. I think it's the sound of God. I think it is God. There's no way to quantify what you're hearing because it's also a feeling.
It's like a frequency.
It's just a frequency that I think if you heard,
yeah.
like the old, like that's why the
And this is
Metatron
on the
was around.
song too. You think?
No, this at this point, I have lost.
The Icarus is gone.
It's gone. I'm in this hall of just like ohm sound, but bigger than that and more fulfilling than that. And as I'm looking up, and I'm wondering what these things are infinite. As you look down, they're all just lined up across from one another through this eternal hallway. And as I look to them, I don't know why I'm prompted to do this, but I'm actually a body at this point. Like I walk over and I just, for some reason, I mimic the same stance.
You're down on all fours.
I decide to get down on all fours and like
Makes sense.
mimic what this Sphinx-like character is doing.
Are you doing this in the real world now?
No,
at
I'm
this
still
point?
laying out on a couch.
Okay,
Like I am
okay,
out.
Okay. That would be
And then
great.
all of a sudden, as this is happening, this one finally breaks its attention
He's walking around the post office
and just
naked.
tilts its big stonish head towards me and just kind of nods. Okay, and as that happens,
Like he said, sup?
instantly,
sup?
well, more like,
Or was it like, we accept you here?
more like, yeah, option B,
Well,
like
same
more
thing.
like, oh,
Really,
you're
it's the
here
same
finally.
thing.
Like arch that back a little bit.
We've been
baby.
waiting for you. So, like, as it happens, as it nods at me, as it
Of course.
acknowledges,
The God's been waiting for Craig. This
as
whole
it
time.
acknowledges me, I grow up to the same
Pretentious.
size as one of these things. I am now one of these things,
Ugh.
and I'm peering
You
down,
lost me
and I
just
can't.
now.
I can't understand. This is where I lose you. Try and keep up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as I'm kneeling next to this big cat, and I'm now this big cat, like it's just boom. They just
He's a big cat
He's
now.
one
What
with
do you
the big
not get?
cats.
they just slide down. And as we're peering down, you can see through all of these different. Like I was at the. There may have been a place that's higher. I'm interested to find it if there's something that is higher.
Some cop's gonna stop him on the sidewalk. He's naked. He's like, I'm a big cat.
He's in an alley downtown.
I'm a big cat.
Stray
Yeah.
cats.
Well, hey, listen. From this,
I am one with the cats.
I'm peering down through all of these different
In a
dimensions.
puddle.
Harmless.
All of these
Question
different
mark.
existences, and I'm trying to make sense of it. And as soon as I'm like, so this is just what you guys do. Like this is
Yeah,
that's my internal
This is
dialogue.
it.
This is it. You're just observing, and they're like, yeah, this is it. Like what else is there to do? Like because you're the sound that you're enveloped by is just the most.
Like angels and
Whole-
demons singing at the same time? Is there any like duality, or is it all just good?
It just is. It's source. It's like
not
the
good
sound
or
of
bad.
source. It's what makes everything. And it's really hard to quantify, and as I'm there, the more and more I become aware of it, and the more and more I question, like, this is what you
Yeah.
do. Like all of a sudden the Icarus does change and it pulls me right back into my body on the deal. And I'm like hyperventilating.
Do you think that was like a don't question it type thing, or like
I
do you
think
think it was just timing?
I think it's a lot of different things. I think the music definitely just kind of brought me back down, or at least kind of snapped me out of that vision. But I remember like so many things. You were talking about being in an alley and acting out all of these things. Well, like I remember after having this experience that I was just like, I'm never going to call someone crazy again. I'm never going to.
You really don't have a leg to stand on.
Well, and like
I was
at
a
what
cat
point,
yesterday.
At
I
what
can't.
point? At what point
A big cat.
is somebody else's reality? At what point is my more right than theirs?
Totally.
It was this total scramble effect where I was like, whoa, like it didn't necessarily bend my perception of reality. Like I still, things were still very tactile, and I was still very aware of my surroundings.
Okay. So you're a big cat. You snap out of that. Where's the next stop?
So the next stop is it kind of goes back into this jungle thing, right? Where I'm just like,
and you're a Jaguar
we're in the jungle
guy.
now.
He's a Jaguar guy too. If you don't,
oh, totally. Like that's when as far
Only
as
drives
Jacksonville
Jags.
Jaguars.
as a
drives
guy
Jags.
that has had that experience for sure. Like I've definitely had a Jaguar come into a trip experience.
The
where I was
theme
just
too, like a lot of South American shaman.
no doubt. And I didn't even really know how to make sense of all of that. And like even sitting there, and I feel bad for this. And it's something that, set and setting, I put a lot of thought into my set and setting for putting the space, but it wasn't just my space. It was also my partner's space. It was also, it was also my partner's space. And so one of the things is if you're going to do that kind of, introspection, your introspective journey, if you decide to take a dose that's so out of line with the one other person that is trying to enjoy themselves with you, that's probably not going to work out.
Like if both of you are
one of those things, like either do it in a group where if you're going to be that guy and you're going to get way out there, go ahead, do that. Definitely do that. But if you're kind of trying to ring in a new year together with someone, and
gotcha.
you know what I mean? Like, and
I was a big cat.
they have,
So somebody was with you this whole time.
Yeah.
yes.
I completely
Yes,
forgot about the other person.
Well, and I didn't even touch.
Were
on
they a
that that
cat?
much.
Okay,
No. So that's,
they were not welcomed
Well,
with
that's
the cats.
so that's what I'm getting at is like, I'm having all of these profound things that are telling me kind of, oh man, there's all these different levels of existence. And, the insects didn't find their significance any less than the giant cat people. And I was really just wowed because I like to
because
think
we
I'm
have
fairly-
status. We have a very much a status. Bugs are down here, and humans are up here, and the animals kind of some animals we eat, some animals we're like we can't eat those. It's
Right.
like, oh no, well this animal you can be mean to, this animal you can't. So we do have these certain levels to be able to go to a place where they're like, it's all the same deal.
Well, and
We're all
the
going to the
lesson
same
kind of
place.
kept repeating itself, where no matter which level I was in, I was getting the same thing out of it. I was getting the same thing out of it, and this weird message of, because I was getting so much more out of it, was like, you eat more. Think this is something. Eat more. And it's like there's this very weird
in the moment, or when you go back.
This story hasn't even started.
No, it has.
So then I
it certainly
ate
has.
more grams.
No, it certainly has, and not in
You'll
the
be a
moment.
huge cat.
Just every time you choose to come back, like this was like my.
I was
whole
a
deal.
dog this time. It was crazy.
I also
Three-headed cat with wings.
I also had an experience where I
Where did you go after that?
Well, hang on. So I had a friend of mine.
Not hanging on.
I mean, that was the pinnacle of my trip, was like that space.
Did you start coming
And
back?
but like, yeah, coming
Allegedly.
back through. Yes, for sure. But coming back through, but the eat more lesson was like one of these things where it's like, oh man, is there a level that's even like, if there is, what's happening there?
Are those even levels? Can you even call them levels, or just planes?
That's the whole thing. It didn't feel like I was
like were the cats better than
the only thing that
dark?
was advancing was the scenery, but the existence was the same. And so like they were in this heavenly plane up here, peering down on all of these other dimensions. But really, their existence was one of the same amount of futility as the
everything.
Is the same amount of futility as the insect that couldn't crawl fast enough to get into the lizard's mouth. They both lived the exact same amount of purpose. One of them was just watching the other one do it, and the other one wasn't even afraid to do it because that was just its station in that place in that time. It was just energy. It was just going to move on through that. However the lizard's going to pass it through, or however its consciousness is going to move on to that next plane, wherever that plume of smoke that's going to expose the web is going to do it. And so like I had a couple of experiences where friends who had never used, it's been such a profound experience for me, psychedelics in general, that I do believe in the people that I love the most, who I know that have an open mind, that trust me, who don't have these experiences, who've for good reason have shied away from drug use, quote unquote.
Sure, yeah.
Like
I get it.
People that I know that they're just dealing with little things that I think that a major entheogenic experience could totally rewire their brain and have them break out of patterns. And so one of my biggest mistakes there is in setting the set and setting and telling your friends, are bringing them along on that. You also want to be gentle in it. Like, I would never give the dose that I took on New Year's Eve to somebody that's never done it before. I wouldn't do that. But at the same time, when you try and tiptoe around it, sometimes they're left underwhelmed, and you may do more damage to changing their mind than before. They're like, yeah, I tried it. I did it. Didn't really do much for me. And I'm like, yeah, well, you only had like 1.5 grams, 2 grams. Like, so I was just like this eat more message. Nobody's getting hurt here. You're all in a very,
that's why you're always trying to make me.
You're always, no. I never try to make you do anything.
Him, every time he's like,
Steve is a ball of nerves, right? Steve and I are we have.
I'm not a ball of nerves.
You're a ball of nerves in that place. You're a ball of nerves.
I'm really listen, here's the deal. You went to this lizard place with the cockroaches. Do you consider that a bad trip? Because you said you never really had a bad trip. I mean,
the roach explained everything.
I know, but that's a section
Things
of,
were
I think,
cool.
people where I've gone to places like that and I'm like, oh my God, of course. I'm just a very
cynical.
It's weird because I'm not really. It's like I've always been tempted by the opposite of what I'm always trying to be. Like, I went through a phase in college. That's why I always say I'm a piece of garbage. Like, I really went through a few years of life just not really caring about the nuances of caring about human emotion, really. Like, just I'm going to go about my business and that's all that really matters. The connection doesn't really matter. And you realize that can't be the way you're living. But I've been in some dark and. But no, you have connections. I mean, connections with us and stuff.
I like credit.
I was just making bad decisions as far as like effing people over too and lying and just being a bad person in general. So sometimes when I would go to those places at that part, I knew that it was telling me that, dude, you can't treat people like that. And I would consider that like a bad trip because I'm just trying to have a good time at the party I'm at.
Yeah.
But it's like, dude, you got this stuff to think about with your parents and your existence and what you're trying to give to the world.
Sure.
And I'm like, I'm trying to go to the Modest Yahoo concert. Like,
I
leave
get
me
that.
alone.
I get that.
Like when we have been in that space, as far as the nerves go, I think that I am a very, I don't know if nervous is the word for it, but
I don't think nervous is the word.
I amped up, but I'm very, like when I asked you about the control, I'm very much, I need a little bit of control.
Yeah,
or I
that's
need
actually
a
what I was gonna
total
say.
ceremony.
That's
what I was
going
going
to say.
When I asked you the question about the control, that's where I try to, if I've allegedly gone to those spaces, I'm like, okay, keep 1 foot in, baby.
The only
keep 1 foot in.
The only amount of control I seek to have on that, because one of the things I love, I've talked about that before. One of the things I love, and I think we have a couple on the text line, is that once you've taken that medicine outside of dimethyltryptamine, which is an instant, instant blast off. Once you've taken that medicine, there is a downtime where it's essentially you have gotten on the scariest roller coaster and it's just now started cranking up. There's no getting off the ride. You have paid the price of admission. You're sitting in your seat. Now you're along for the ride. And guess how much control you have over it? You have none.
Well, you can have a little bit,
but you don't. Like, and I guess that's what I'm getting at. Is that's how I approach it. I'm not suggesting that nobody has any control. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is I enjoy the ride a lot more.
You'll have experiences
when
like that.
When I am just looking straight ahead and feeling the wind against my face and holding on when it gets a little bit scary, knowing that after this corkscrew, we're pulling right back in and we're all good to go.
Yeah.
And as I've come to that realization, I do have a very hard time with bad.
I'm a little neurotic.
Neurotic
is a perfect
also
word for it.
Also a ball of nerves. So whatever,
a ball of nerves sounds like crap.
Potato.
Like, we're friends.
Yeah, you're
Jesus
crippled by
Lord.
neurosis.
Jesus Lord, thank you.
I just
it's better.
But one of my favorite things, we've had an experience before, and it just put a giant smile in my face when you sat down next to me. And one of the things I love about we're two different types even here. Like you're up and going all the time. I'm like, hey, kind of just chilling.
Hey.
And so what was great was like as you're like, oh, is this what's going on here? Is this how my stomach's gonna feel the whole time?
Oh.
Is this what's going on? And then all of a sudden you sit on the love seat next to me and you're like,
oh God, I know.
oh,
cockpit.
this is what the cockpit's like? And I'm like, yeah, man, strap in. It's great. We're just gonna.
I've been in the boiler room for
Yeah,
the last.
I was like,
45
you've been
minutes
shoveling coal. You've been
dude.
shoveling coal. I'm up here just steering, babe. It's great.
That's cool.
Moral of the story is I've found that the less control I've had over my environment, the more understanding I've come back with as far as where I fit in. And like I also kind of had like almost a nihilistic view that came from that on a negative note where I was like, a lot of what we do is futile. It just seems like it's happening in slow motion here. So, I mean, there was definitely some things that I had to work through. It starts to make you question, what is my purpose? If these guys are crawling to get in the reptile's mouth and these guys are just up here listening to this sound, watching me do whatever it is that I do, what is it that, I was going to ask you to choose. I get to choose whatever it is that I want to do. And the next time I go back there, I know I got an idea of what it takes to get to that next level, because I've had several of these experiences where I come back with some great things, have some great laughs with friends, but I've never doubled the dose.
I heard a little horse will take you there.
A little horse?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it just crawls over the rainbow. Just
no, I think, I mean, you're on to something there. And I think the control thing, I've never looked at, psychedelics the way I do now at this point in my life, especially having heard the interview we heard today.
Unbelievable.
And hearing,
I bombed it, but he was great.
The science behind what is going on. Because a lot of my neuroses and my balls of nerves come from
like a pink pustule of nerves.
Yeah, like my dad. No, but the nerves thing. No, it was a great interview though, just to hear
stick around for it.
The science behind. I didn't know what was happening to me. Who's making LSD when you're in college? These are mushrooms? I heard mushrooms can kill you.
That's such a big part of it, as we get Johns Hopkins professors, doctors that are involved in this research, and there is a control in the quality of medicine and the quality of the environment.
And you're bold. I don't think a lot of people are that willing. I think it's more strange to be like, yeah, it took 5 grams and sat there.
There are people out there that are super inspiring to me that are definitely been, and I think a lot of our greatest thinkers were all putting themselves in I'm not suggesting, I'm just saying, I think guys like Terrence McKenna don't become as good as formulating sentences without really just getting out there and then doing it frequently enough to where they can bring enough of it back. You do it enough times. Oh, enough of this is repeating. I can kind of explain what this is like. The more and more I do it, it's a little bit easier to explain, but it's still very much an unspoken understanding between people that do these things. So a couple of things: don't eat 3 times the amount as the person that's with you if you're just trying to have a good time.
Don't eat anything, guys. Just eat regular food, organic food all the time, guys.
And
sponsored by Aldi.
Just we did pick up a couple new sponsors. We'll talk about them on the other side. We've got an interview with
we're moving
Johnson,
that to 9 o'clock. Yeah.
If you guys stick around for the 9 o'clock hour, he was tremendous. He was so
my
good.
Favorite interview ever as far as learning things about what I wanted to learn about. Sorry, everyone else.
Sorry for me. Steve was great.
No, I was terrible. You were great.
Steve knocked it out of the park and then just totally blew his wad on our little Facebook thing.
Oh, you can say that on the radio?
Yeah, I think so.
You spent a lot of money on it, right?
A little bit.
That's what you meant.
This is Hoosier Sophisticate on WGNU 920 AM. Stick around on the other side of the break. We got some fun stuff for you. You can get an insurance quote anywhere. What people are really looking for is someone to help manage the risk of everyday life. And that's exactly what James Carlton State Farm does. He's also dangerously handsome. He has a dream in disguise.
James Carlton has the best customer service in the game. You'll never get a voicemail, and you'll always get a great back rub.
He has the softest hands. A strong sense of community is important to who he is as an agent. From local school sponsorships to sandbagging during floods, it's paramount to be a part of the community. We love the cut of his jib.
Guys, call 314-961-4800. Find them online at carltoninsurance.net.
We wish he was our dad. Hey there, Krager.
Well, hey, Steve.
How you doing, buddy?
Man, I've been pretty good.
Well, that's good. Hey, you heard anything about them newfangled hemp oils they got now?
I just don't know where to find a good one.
Well, I find the best full spectrum hemp oil from MomedCanco.com.
Where?
I get it from MomedCanco.com.
Is it expensive?
It don't cost 2 kittens whiskers. And if you enter HOSO in the promo box, you're going to get yourself 15% off.
Buddy, it sounds like we're squatting tall cotton.
Darn right we are.
Where can I find them?
You can find them online, MomedCanco.com, Missouri Medical Cannabis Company.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah.
Lifetime.
Jill.
It lasts a lifetime.
Come on.
It lasts a lifetime.
Yeah.
And just go Google it. I wanna let those shingles down, girl, for you. I wanna let those shingles down, boy, for you. I'm gonna do some siding, get you excited. James Hardy siding. Google it.
Roof up for a lifetime. You know I make your neighbors cry. Boo, boo. Cause we tell all them leaks go bye. And you know we all do the side.
James Hardy boy, yeah.
Guys, Lifetime Roofing, they're the best roofers in the game, best customer service. LifetimeSTL.com. Google them.
The government thinks 3 letters are bad. So bad, in fact, we won't even mention them. They even think that we've been waiting on them to tell us what works and what doesn't. Fine, we'll play your game. Look, friends, our fans have given us countless anecdotal testimonies of how Missouri Medical Cannabis Company's hemp oil is helping them and their pets. Now, we wouldn't be so forward as to say this oil that has been used for a couple thousand years for a smorgasbord of ailments and applications has any positive effect on your health or well-being. But we will tell you, it's a neat oil to have around the house. We personally think it makes your pet's food taste better. And if your pet's food tastes better, they're going to be happier and generally more playful. Come to think of it, it probably makes your food taste better. May as well see if it makes you happier and more playful. Life's too short to worry about what a group of unelected bureaucrats think about you or your habits. Go to MomedCanco.com and try out this delicious oil. It might make things better. And by might, I mean it probably will, but we aren't crazy enough to say that. If you just want to taste it and try it out, enter HOSO at checkout, and you're going to get 15% off everything site-wide. Just a reminder, this hemp oil was rumored to have all kinds of benefits before Mitch McConnell saved us from something we didn't need saved from. Thanks, Mitch. MomedCanco.com. MomedCanco.com. MomedCanco.com.
Sergeant Jabari Wright.
In the Army, I was trained as a combat lifesaver. In 2012, had an accident and became paralyzed. I was used to working in healthcare, and how am I supposed to help people? And I'm in a wheelchair now. It really severely impacted my confidence.
Jim Arndt, PAVE Program, Paralyzed Veterans of America.
PAVE helps veterans rebuild lives with valuable careers. We assess the skills, build the resumes, and help with the interviewing skills to be able to find a career that our veterans are looking for.
PVA took what I was doing in the military and helped me translate that to meaningful employment in the civilian sector. Hooking up with them helped to empower me.
PAVE really concentrates on the one-on-one relationships. Unlike other programs that measure success by placements alone, PAVE places greater emphasis on quality jobs and continued support, our Partner for Life guarantee.
To learn more, visit pva.org. A public service message from Paralyzed Veterans of America.
Hey there, sophisticated Hoosiers. Have you been to our website? Visit HoosierSophisticate.com and listen to our uncensored podcast. Share some laughs with us. Send us fan mail so we can feel warm and special. Buy our merchandise so that we can eat. Wear your Hoosier Sophisticate t-shirt at social gatherings and let the women approach you. Wear it around the office and get that big promotion instead of Ted. That's right. Screw Ted. Ted sucks. That's HoosierSophisticate.com.
Roof? You know what that sound is. That's Rufus the Roofing Dog from Lifetime Roofing and Renovation. They're former insurance adjusters. They will fly a drone over your house to check to see if you've had any hail damage. Heck, they'll get up there and tell you themselves. They have an office in Webster Groves, and they're looking to help you out. Lifetime Roofing and Renovation, 314
800-0426. Give them a call. Find them online at lifetimestl.com.
Hi, I found a toy dinosaur over on the playground by Smith Street. It had this phone number on it, and, well, I just wanted to make sure the dinosaur made it back to its little owner.
Yeah, hi. I think I found your kid's stuffed animal near the swing set. Just want to call. I'm sure she misses it.
I know my son gets super attached to the smallest things, even a fire truck, and I'd be happy to drop it off. The toy was a little muddy, so I cleaned it up, and it's good to go whenever you're around.
When I found the little sippy cup, I just had to give you a call. It's for a kid, you know?
We'd do anything for kids. Yet 1 in 6 children in the U.S. struggle with hunger. Help end childhood hunger and give all of our kids the meals they need to grow. Learn how at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Push away the paperwork and catch up on your sports every day at noon with the Brian Stoll Show.
The commissioner of the XFL, Oliver Luck, with us here.
I think we can do better than that in St. Louis, quite honestly, given the passion that exists there and the demand that I think will exist there, and the fact that I feel really strongly and very confident that we can put a really good product in the field that folks will say, "Wow, this is fun."
That's the Brian Stoll Show. Weekdays at noon on WGNU 920 AM.
WGNU, the talk of St. Louis. Streaming live at WGNU920am.com.
No need for the bride to feel tragic. The rest is push-button magic. So whether you bake or broil or stew, the Frigidaire kitchen does it all for you. My cake is ready.
Toads have been found which do secrete DMT-like compounds. There are many chemical compounds in nature which are psychoactive, but a much narrower spectrum of these compounds are truly what we call psychedelic or mind manifesting.
Let's take a trip, St. Louis, with Hoosier Sophisticate Radio, presented by Mycelio Media. Now we're throwing it back to Stephen Elgin and Craig Kohler. Now water your brain and watch it grow, 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 grow.
God. We're lucky. We're two lucky boys, but integrity is
Let's
integrity
get
here?
weird.
Is integrity here?
I don't know. Is he?
I don't know.
Integrity in the building.
Oh, he's in the
Apparently,
building.
yes, evidently.
Hey guys, this show's Hoosier Sophisticate. It's brought to you by Lifetime Roofing.
Roof?
James Carlton,
insurance.net.
Thank you. And we got a Missouri Medical Cannabis Company.
MomedCanco.com.
Had a guy buy a bottle today, asked me, he's like, "Hey man, what's the deal?" And I sent him the text right after. I just sent him like minutes. And he's like, "I already ordered." I forgot to send him his Hoso thing. So I feel bad. Blake, hook him up. And I'm going to read all of our comments on our Rose Extermination. Should we mention?
Sure.
We're going to mention Rose Extermination because they're going to be our new old sponsor. They
Spiders and mice.
We're going to bring back spiders and mice.
Spiders and mice.
Real quick, if you got bugs, they're coming. If you got a house, you have bugs. Rose Extermination. My mom answers the phone.
You got to ask for the Cucky special, though.
The Cucky special. They love it. Okay, so Rose Extermination, love that. All right, I'm going to read some of these comments if you guys... Do you guys mind?
Please.
We got Ken says, "I'm freaking out, man." Vanessa says, "It was a long wait till 8 p.m. Man, our fans are loving it.
I know.
Tom says, "Bring the funk, dub." Ken says, "Dreams as in aspirations," because I said, everyone, put your dreams on here, and we're going to give away a bottle of Missouri Medical Cannabis Company vape juice. Okay?
Oh, baby.
I think it's 300.
She only
300
want me for my
vape juice. Now my vape juice. I'm talking Momed Kenko vape juice. Scoo! Thank you. Hoso playlist. They're asking us if we can get a Hoso playlist together.
Sure
Craig,
can.
that might be right up your alley.
Sure
Vanessa's talking about astral projection. Maybe that was a part of your trip. Maybe it was similar to astral projection.
I think you can get to very similar places via astral projection for sure.
Ken has a dream. Well then, Picture this: an orchard, garden, farm, brewery, bed and breakfast, performance venue run and occupied by a collective of like-minded individuals with a variety of skills and talents to create a new society which will eventually succeed and become the new direction. Wow.
I like it.
I'm in, Ken.
That's an aspiration.
Now your homework for tonight is to watch
One Direction.
Wild Country.
One Direction.
That was an aspiration. like myself, when you asked that question, I would have answered honestly. Like the other night, truthfully, I had a dream I was being attacked by a duck, and I woke up and I was looking around. I was like, man, that duck was mean. It was mean.
Was it a regular sized duck?
It just a
horse-sized duck.
No, I was not one with the big ducks.
Vanessa says
have that privilege.
It made a lot of stuff make sense to me, and she put it in quotes.
Sure.
And that's something that
Astral projection, no question. I mean, I think any opportunity you have to give yourself perspective and a blimp view of existence and reality is going to make you a more understanding person in life.
For sure. Our interview talks about that. Ken also says, have you ever heard the I-beam played live in an indoor venue? The I-beam, like
with a bow? Oh, I could see that.
He goes, I'm thinking that is the closest
Apple
sound that
product?
you might be describing.
I think that would make sense.
Interesting.
We used to have these wire baskets on the bottom of our school desks, and if you licked your fingers and you would stroke these baskets, you could get them to start resonating like you would like a bow on strings, and they would start going.
Are you kidding?
And they would go. And I taught like 6 other dudes in my class. It was just the meanest teacher we ever had, Miss Google.
Miss Google.
Her name was Miss Google. G-U-G-E-L. She was notoriously just a brouhaha.
Okay, that's fun. Isn't it?
So
that's fun.
She was
That's a fun
she was
thing.
just it was not a pleasant experience being in her class. When she wasn't there, she's the only person to ever send me to the principal's office in high school, to which my assistant principal tore her referral up immediately because she was always writing just ridiculous referrals. But when she was gone, we had a substitute, sweet little lady, and I taught like 7 dudes how to do this. And as she would have her back turned to the class, we would have this and as all of us started to do it, the whole room was just, you had this huge vibrating sound.
She's like,
going on.
I'm tripping.
She's like,
I'm a cat person.
What is that noise? I'm like, they've been working on the HVAC. It's
You were
been
that kid.
I was horrible. It's one of the bad things I did. She bought it though, and she actually wrote a note to Miss Google. Was like, the class was a little distracted by all of the work they've
Do
been
we have
doing on
that
HVAC.
that drop that's like,
You can't cough for drops. It's not.
I just love
You can't cough for them. That's not how it works. It has to be spontaneous.
A human on our page, I won't call him out. They said, I left my body during a DMT trip, only to be thrust back and halfway through the kaleidoscope tunnel by my then girlfriend yelling at me to breathe. Name. What if I don't need to breathe anymore? Ever think of that? No, you didn't.
Selfish.
Yeah, I know, right? Rachel says trust. Trust has a lot to do with it.
Trust has everything to do with it.
All right, that's huge. And we got a lot of emojis. Tiffany Jones, who will be speaking at the 420 event
tomorrow,
free event, VFW,
noon to 5
off Midway, VFW
Midland.
3944.
You got it.
Steve, I'm gonna have to bring you some Magtine. Calms the mind and relaxes the muscles. Meditation in a bottle. You ever heard of that?
I want to tell you a little story. Today is it's the anniversary of what nobody could have ever planned for. Scientist, Swiss father of psychedelic medicine, Albert Hofmann. He synthesized LSD in his lab as a medical stimulant for the respiratory and circulatory system in 1938. At the time, he didn't know what powers it held. Revisiting his discovery 5 years later, he caught a glimpse of its effects when some of the drug was absorbed through his fingertips, describing the experience as dreamlike and a not unpleasant intoxicated-like condition. Intrigued 3 days later, on a day that would go down in history as Bicycle Day, he did what any responsible scientist would do: experiment on himself. Taking a dose of 250 micrograms in his laboratory, thinking it was an appropriate threshold dose. We know now that he overdid it. 200 mics is the standard. Hofmann turned on, tuned in, and dropped out for the first time. Within an hour, his perception began to ebb and flow rapidly, and he began to freak out, convinced that his neighbor was a witch and that he was going insane.
Maybe she
Hofmann
was.
wanted to go home. Unfortunately, Hofmann had no access to a car because of wartime restrictions.
Obviously.
So he had to make the journey home by bicycle. The trip was a stressful one. His vision wavered and he felt as though he were motionless. But as soon as he reached his condition's climax, he came back from a weird, unfamiliar world to reassuring everyday reality. In his notes, he went on to describe the hallucinogenic trip that would go on to inspire a countercultural revolution, and decades later, a generation of scientists looking to harness LSD's powers to treat mental health issues. The stigma left over from the 60s remains hard to shake, but LSD has slowly been undergoing a rebrand in recent years that is much more in line with Hoffman's original vision, using it as a treatment for psychiatric ailments.
Wow. Happy Bicycle
Happy
Day.
Bicycle Day, everybody.
Bicycle
Everybody
Day,
at home
everybody.
celebrating Bicycle Day.
Bicycle Day.
Thank you, Albert Hoffman. Thank you for your contributions to the mental health
Thank
of
you.
mankind.
Happy birthday.
And he also rode bicycles. Is that why
he had to ride a bicycle? Because he couldn't have a car during wartime.
Could you imagine
on 250 mics?
Accidentally getting done? You're the first guy.
Whoops.
Did he get it from the ricin? Is that how did he synthesize it first? Do you know?
I don't
I'm
have
sure
that
we
in front of
don't
me.
know. We'll look up that. We'll get that looked up by someone.
Somebody, yeah, like
Somebody look
we have
that
an
up.
intern, yeah.
And but could you imagine that? And I guess so. The next day, which is the bicycle day, so he accidentally dosed himself up yesterday.
Yeah, I think it's
Today-
3 days later. Yeah,
3 days.
Yeah,
3 days later.
yeah. he
Good
was like,
Friday.
I'm gonna go do that again.
Oh my gosh, a lot of parallels. A lot of
Today's
parallels.
Good Friday, the day famously that Christ was crucified. And I'll tell you what, growing up Catholic, I always felt the Holy Week was those were the most interesting masses that we performed in. If you remember, like Holy Thursday, they would do like the washing of
They
the
were
feet.
the only ones with any juice.
washing of the feet?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man.
What is
I'm
that?
a huge.
I mean, I can guess.
That's I'm a huge fan of the washing of the feet. I think it's a super humbling experience, right? Like,
What do
and
you
the
do? Like
idea
a
is, like,
dude
people-
washes your feet?
Yeah, people would go.
Wait,
up
who
and-
does?
That's what Jesus used
The,
to do
the
all
priest,
the time.
the priest
to show.
wash feet, and then
Like
there
you take
was-
your shoes and everything off, and he walks up and washes your.
He
Like
walks
what's the procedure?
Is there anything more humbling?
No, I
and,
actually wanted to be a part of
respectful?
my wedding to wash my wife's feet and vice versa. My
No,
cousin.
you should both have to wash homeless dudes' feet.
Okay, that's fine too.
Thank
I mean,
you.
that'd be fine. Couple anybody homeless guys you want to bring along for the ride? Just whatever. I'm washing
If
feet.
he came
guys.
up, if some priest,
I got a power washer. I'm hitting that.
if some priest walked up and tried to wash my skis, I'd be like, "How about the kissing of the ass?"
but
Because you're
during-
not gonna do that. No,
So-
get away from me, you freak.
3 days later, obviously.
Weird
Oh,
guy.
come on, wash your
Everything Catholics do, some kind of a fetish.
I
You
know.
drink his blood and touch
there's
his
no-
feet, and let's
put
hang
some
out these
kink
little
in there.
kids.
Put a little kink
I'm
in
sorry,
there.
no, anybody Catholic. I'm just
No,
teasing.
it's great. I'm just saying, as a kid, with like, church becomes a little repetitive, right? Especially
my
in the Catholic
gosh.
Church, we have like a playbook we have to follow every, for an hour. It's like a lot of standing, a lot of kneeling, a lot of sitting, a lot of shaking hands.
Sometimes they'll redo the
Kinda running the
Thursday
whole
mass
gamut.
Sunday, or like we used to go Tuesday and Thursdays. Like we're gonna replay this one.
Really? Oh, we were coming fresh every
You
day.
did,
We
and
were
our
coming
days
fresh.
to mail it in.
Mail it in on you, huh?
Mail it in every once in a while.
Holy Week was always really interesting. The Stations of the Cross was always. Did you guys reenact the Stations of the Cross as kids?
Oh yeah, that was
the whole
Friday.
deal. I had an idea to do my own little Good Friday experiment at the cathedral. That's for another time. But something happened on Good Friday. Boy, what?
It was
50
also
years ago.
It was also called the Marsh Chapel Experiment. It was in 1962. It was conducted on Good Friday at Boston University's Marsh Chapel. Walter N. Pankey, a graduate student in theology at Harvard Divinity School, designed the experiment under the supervision of a fella called Timothy Leary. Not sure if you've ever heard of him.
Never heard of him.
And the Harvard Psilocybin Project. Pankey's experiment investigated whether psilocybin, the active principle in psychedelic mushrooms, would act as a reliable entheogen in religious predisposed subjects. And it certainly did. They said it was some of the most profound religious experiences they've ever had in their
Yeah,
lives.
several of the subjects reported, kind of in their own setting, that it was the most spiritual experience that they'd ever lived through, which is relatable.
Prior to
Relatable.
the Good Friday service, 20 graduate degree divinity students.
Graduate?
20 graduate degree divinity students. That's pretty good. Students, volunteers from the Boston area were randomly divided into two groups. In a double-blind experiment, half of the students received psilocybin, while a control group received a large dose of niacin
for free.
A little bit different.
Niacin flushes you, makes you
Yes.
feel that initial feeling that maybe a psilocybin experience would bring on.
And initially, some of the people that had niacin felt that they had been given the psychoactive drug, but obviously, after about a half an hour to an hour, they're like, "Oh no, this is not the psychoactive
I wasn't in the winning group."
So almost all of the members of the experimental group reported experiencing profound religious experiences, providing empirical support for the notion that psychedelic drugs can facilitate religious experiences. One of the participants in the experiment was religious scholar Houston Smith, who would become an author of several textbooks on comparative religion. He later described his experience as the most powerful cosmic homecoming I have ever experienced.
I think that is a beautiful place to lead you into the interview following and on the other side of the break.
Are we up against
We had a
it?
chance. We are up against it. We had a chance to have an unbelievable
getting so
conversation with Dr. Matthew
But we
Johnson.
could just be below it or above it.
I'm getting
or on the
close
other
to
side. We might be
Hopkins
we might be
professor.
on the other side of the break already, and we don't even know.
We can be.
We are in a different
We get to
dimension.
be where we
just
choose
blew
to be.
everyone's mind.
We get to be where we choose to be.
All right.
And we get to be mired in the same amount of insignificance as ever before, or the same amount of significance, however you want to paint it.
This doctor flat broke it down.
I want to
for
talk.
us.
I want to talk to him for 50 hours. I
Forever.
couldn't even get questions out because I had 100 I wanted to ask him.
For
He's amazing. Stick around to the other side of the break. This first hour brought to you by James Carlton State Farm. Check out carltoninsurance.net, especially if you have a young driver, 16 to 24 years old.
Someone call.
Give
Be
him a
the
shout.
person to
Give him a
call.
shout. He will make your insurance experience better. The whole show is brought to you by Momed Canco. They got peanut butter now. Yeah, peanut butter now. CBD peanut butter.
I'm still mad about the James Carlton thing. What hit him with the number?
Do they have the
961
the CBD that's for
4800.
pets, but also in peanut butter?
Hey,
Get it?
you, James
Yes, I get it.
Carlton. Someone be the person. Okay, Jaden Schwartz was the person last night. Okay,
Congratulations, by the
you gonna be that person? Call James. Okay. What does it hurt to say? Can you save me money?
Doesn't.
Is it that big?
Can you make my life a little bit better, James? Can you do that? And he'd be like, happily, because I am a steward of the community. James Carlton Insurance, 314-961-4800. Momed Canco makes this whole show possible. This is Hoosier Sophisticate. Stick around for Dr. Matthew Johnson from Johns Hopkins University on the other side of the break. You can get an insurance quote anywhere. What people are really looking for is someone to help manage the risk of everyday life. And that's exactly what James Carlton State Farm does. He's also dangerously handsome. He has the dreamiest eyes.
James Carlton has the best customer service in the game. You'll never get a voicemail, and you'll always get a great back rub.
He has the softest hands.
A strong sense of community is important to who he is as an agent. From local school sponsorships to sandbagging during floods, it's paramount to be a part of the community.
We love the cut of his jib.
Guys, call 314-961-4800. Find him online at carltoninsurance.net.
We wish he was our dad.
Hey there, Krager.
Well, hey, Steve.
How you doing, buddy?
Man, I've been pretty good.
Well, that's good. Hey, you heard anything about them newfangled hemp oils they got now?
I just don't know where to find a good one.
Well, I find the best full spectrum hemp oil from MomedCanco.com. Where? I get it from MomedCanco.com.
Is it expensive?
It don't cost 2 kittens whiskers. And if you enter HOSO in the promo box, you're going to get yourself 15% off.
Buddy, it sounds like we're squatting tall cotton.
Darn right we are.
Where can I find them?
You can find them online, MomedCanco.com, Missouri Medical Cannabis Company.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah.
Lifetime.
Jill.
It lasts a lifetime.
Come on.
And just go Google it. I wanna let those shingles down, girl, for you. I wanna let those shingles down, boy, for you. I'm gonna do some siding, get you excited. James Hardy siding. Google it. Real top for a lifetime. You know I make your neighbors cry. Boo, boo. Cause we tell all the leaks go bye. And you know we all do the side. James Hardy, boy, yeah.
Guys, Lifetime Roofing. They're the best roofers in the game. Best customer service. LifetimeSTL.com. Google them.
WGNU, the talk of St. Louis. Streaming live at WGNU920am.com.
I think really the worth in these psychedelics is simply that they allow you to triangulate upon reality. I mean, in other words, if all you've got is awake and asleep, you can't go far with that. But if you've got awake, asleep, and DMT as points, you can build a much more dimensionally rich model of consciousness.
Welcome back, St. Louis. Let's get your mind right with Craig Kohler and Stephen Elgin. This is Hoosier Sophisticate on WGNU.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Hoosier Sophisticate here on WGNU 920 AM, WGNU920am.com. Stream us live at Facebook, YouTube, anywhere you can find us. We are joined right now on the phones with a Johns Hopkins Associate Professor of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, Dr. Matthew Johnson. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Excellent.
Doing really well.
It's nice to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to have you on here because we talk, we're on terrestrial radio here in St. Louis, and we're talking psychedelics. We talk about cannabis legalization. We kind of just talk about out of the box type things. So it's always excellent to have an actual doctor on here, kind of breaking this down for us. How did you, I always try to start out with this question. How did you find yourself on this path that you're on with psychedelics?
Yeah, I stumbled across this kind of like hidden history back when I was an undergraduate, this earlier research that happened from the 50s through the early 70s that was done with mainly LSD, but really promising research that had really just been buried and not for any really credible reasons. It was largely through just associations with the counterculture and not really concerns about whether the research could be done safely, but just a lot of bogus, reasons. And so it seemed like a really attractive area. And so I was able to 15 years ago, get involved early on, right after I finished my PhD, start some research with psilocybin myself, where I was doing my postdoctoral work here at Johns Hopkins. And I've been able to continue that like for 15 years ever since. And it's sort of like, it's worked out because there's not a lot of funding for that work and it's sort of on the side, even though we've gotten a heck of a lot done. But, I sort of have a day job in terms of my research, in terms of things that kind of bring in most of the research dollars to kind of keep my job going. But, the psychedelics are clearly the most promising side of my research and an area of just incredible interest. A lot of potential there.
So let me ask you, Doctor, for our fans out there, can you explain what it is that you're kind of honing in on as far as how psychedelics can help people with psychiatric conditions or whether that's depression? What exactly does your research having you look into?
So we've done a number of trials with, so-called healthy normals, that is people without a problem to fix.
Healthy normals.
And also therapeutics. And the two area of therapeutics that we've looked at are helping people quit smoking. So these are tobacco cigarette smokers that, like most adult smokers in the U.S. They want to quit, and they've just kind of been unable to kind of make that work for them long term. So that's where my interests are, not in convincing someone to change, something that they view as an acceptable risk, but, something that they want to do but haven't been able to muster up enough, whatever you want to call it, long-term stability in their behavior to make that a reality. So giving them the tools needed to make that happen. And so then the other area would be depression. That's most of the work that I've done in that area has been with cancer patients. So we published a big trial in 51 people a couple of years ago that looked at cancer patients with strong depression and or anxiety associated with their cancer. So these are, and they didn't necessarily have to be terminal, but it had to be a serious diagnosis that had an impact on their quality of life. And a good chunk actually, in fact, were, terminal. They had, a diagnosis that, didn't suggest that they would,
Sure.
be around for long, unfortunately. And so you can get some real life impairment in those existential areas. We're also doing some research now with depression outside of cancer. But that's a little bit earlier stage of research.
No, it's amazing. You mentioned earlier how you were kind of influenced by some of the studies they had done earlier, 40s, 50s, some of the studies that you kind of start to hear about now. But one of the recent studies I had seen was LSD had the brain activated in certain areas, and it was like communicating with different parts. Being a layman, I tried to understand it best I could. Are we seeing anything like that with psilocybin? And I thought it was interesting that it was the first of its kind that had been done in a while with some sort of brain scanning equipment. And so have we seen anything of how this is working, how it's helping with depression, how it's getting people to quit smoking? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can give you the brief rundown on that. So one question you answered is, does psilocybin look the same? Yeah, and that's part of the exciting. The excitement here is that a picture is emerging. These drugs that we call classic psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin, we've known for a while that the primary receptor that they activate is the same, but of course that's just one domino in a long chain of like biological changes that are triggered, and then there are other receptors that are involved. But big picture, in terms of what you see happening in the brain, one of the most meaningful levels of analysis is that both psilocybin and LSD cause globally an increase in synchronization across different brain areas. So you can think of a lot of brain activity as sort of compartmentalized. It's kind of like an office where, okay, you're one branch and we're going to have you guys focus on one thing. And don't worry about what the other guys down the hall are doing, because that's going to, you just do your thing, and then, kind of we'll get together every once in a while and kind of, in a central planning meeting. But for the most part, you're doing your own thing. You folks are doing your own thing over there. And now so by analogy, now all of a sudden on the psychedelic, there's a lot of crosstalk across those areas that are normally doing their own thing. So this is probably associated with a lot of what people describe as insights, or just novel ways of viewing problems, and also associated with some of the perceptual effects like synesthesia, which is the bleeding across senses.
Sure.
And so, and these interesting mystical type effects, such as the sense of unity, feeling a oneness. And in fact, something connected to that is that even though you see an overall increase level of connection across these brain areas, or a synchronization in the activity across these brain areas, you actually see the reverse in a particular area called the default mode network. And this is a small number of brain areas that are associated with the sense of self. So thinking about yourself, thinking about your past, projecting yourself into the future, imagining what you might do, you're ruminating on yourself, you're daydreaming. That area is more active when all that stuff is going on. When one is on a psychedelic such as psilocybin or LSD, those areas and the synchronization across those areas that's associated with, thinking about the self in all those ways, all of a sudden that synchronization stops or it's severely decreased. So that network level activity or synchronization that's associated with having a sense of self goes away. And that's fascinating because now we have a biological signature of what has been described for 60, 70 years with terms like ego death, with using this older but less empirically validated language, this more Freudian language of this thing called the ego. Well, now we see a biology associated with the sense of self is strongly affected by psychedelics. Now, where the unknown meets the known is, what are the long-term effects on that? And we don't know that yet. We know those fascinating things happen acutely. What we don't know is, what does the brain look like 6 months from now, where we know behaviorally, oftentimes the person is very much changed, and they said, well, this has caused a shift in my life, and I feel different in these ways, and I'm no longer depressed, or I'm not smoking. And you could see, through biological verification, you have them breathe through a machine and give a urine sample, you could prove that they haven't been smoking. But what's going on in the brain that might underlie that changed life perspective? So that's what we don't know yet, but we suspect there might be some long-term changes of this type that are no doubt different than what you see acutely. I mean, people aren't going around having psychedelic type overt effects, in the long term. But is there a resettling of those systems? Is it like kind of shaking up the tectonic plates, but now they've settled down into a more sustainable, position, something like that by analogy?
That's incredible.
That is awesome.
You brought up how you got into it and discovering a lot of past research. And today is what some people know as Bicycle Day, where Albert Hoffman found synthesized, I guess, LSD.
Happy Bicycle Day.
Happy Bicycle Day.
Happy Bicycle Day. So we were talking about, you're talking about that. I wonder, you said that LSD and psilocybin have a similar effect with making the brain hemispheres communicate with one another. Can you extrapolate that out to different psychedelics? Do you see this as a growing field in science where more people are coming to this because it was so promising in the psychiatric world in the 50s and 60s? Timothy Leary being a big time, name in the psychology world and developing tests to put people in groups. I wonder, do you call on that past research? And is there a group of peers that is growing to the point where there's a lobby talking to our lawmakers? I know this is a lot of questions in one, but is it growing so much that this information is becoming so prevalent over the whole the whole psychiatric spectrum that we have people talking to politicians for us about what we can do with laws?
Sure. I can hit some of those, and feel free to remind me if you've maxed out the limits of my working memory capacity if I forgot some of those questions. But one of them is, what about other psychedelics? So it seems to be like the same basic picture is going on with what we call the classic psychedelics. So that also includes not only LSD and psilocybin, but also DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is in ayahuasca. Sometimes people use it by itself. It's often smoked.
Darn right they do.
And mescaline, which is it's probably the case. We know less about this, but it's probably a very good case that this is the underlying story for all of the classic psychedelics. So mescaline is in peyote and other cacti like San Pedro and Peruvian torch. But now there are other kind of compounds that are sometimes called psychedelic, but they're not classic psychedelics. They work in a fundamentally different way than those other ones. This is like ketamine, MDMA, salvia divinorum. And so we know less about those in terms of brain network activity and the degree to which this kind of story about the acute change in sense of self holds up. But let's see, in terms of whether we touch upon the older research, absolutely. I've been in this field for 15 years, and typically my scientific papers will have citations going back to the 1950s to the 60s, and folks have heard of Tim Leary, but he was in fact he was actually kind of late to the game in a way in psychedelic research back in the day. And so you had a whole host of characters. One of my favorite is Humphrey Osmond. He actually coined the term psychedelic through his correspondence with Aldous Huxley. You have Abram Hoffer and Sidney Cohen, and all of these, they weren't quite as wild as Leary, who in fact was a wild man long before he ever touched a psychedelic. So that's an interesting part of this history. It wasn't that he went kind of off the deep end because of psychedelics. Like, he was kicked out of 2 universities long before he ever did anything with psychedelics or took a psychedelic. So it seemed to be, Leary was Leary, and a lot of these kind of more, less sensationalistic folks,
Sure.
They liked Leary, but they begged him to tone it down a bit and not to scare folks,
You can't
and not to
tone
kind of jump
Timothy
off
Leary
the deep
down,
end.
baby.
And then once he left academia, then it was just on. Then he was like,
He was hanging out with Hell's Angels, breaking out of prison.
oh yeah, and then you mentioned the personality test. I love the story where he, it was a true story apparently, where he was required to take a personality test in prison to determine what level of security he was assigned. And he was, in fact, the developer of that personality test, so he knew exactly what answers to put down.
That's awesome.
He was a well-respected personality researcher before he ever got into psychedelic research. But to be clear, he did some good research with psychedelics. He really was important, and he wasn't the first to come up with it, but he really was the most powerful voice for emphasizing this effect of set and setting on psychedelics, and how you get these more mystical type, sometimes called spiritual experiences in a particular setting with a very high level of interpersonal support. So he did a lot to articulate that in particular. And even though he was criticized in some of his methods, and he had some creative statistics and whatnot, but nonetheless, he had some early interests that seemed to be, he might have been onto something in terms of criminal recidivism reform. I did some survey research with my colleague Peter Hendricks at University of Alabama, Birmingham, that suggested that people who have used psychedelics in their lifetime are in a parolee type system are less likely to recommit crimes compared to people who haven't. So in terms of Leary's interest in using psychedelics to help people with a criminal past to rehabilitate, it's early, but he may have been onto something.
Yeah, well, that's cute. How are we supposed to keep the prisons full, buddy? We're going to try to get them out of there. I got 30 questions in a row for you, so pay attention. If you thought Craig's were bad.
I'm sure to max my working memory now.
You mentioned spirituality. I always find it, I'm a good little Catholic boy. I grew up, and anytime I had questions, they were like, faith, buddy. Just, it's faith. You got to believe it. So I think, seeing the brain scans of what's happening with being on a psychedelic, and you said that sense of oneness, are we figuring out that spirituality can maybe be measured on some sort of EKG or whatever?
Essentially, yeah. And in fact, I think that's one of the many powerful ways in which psychedelics can contribute to science. So completely outside of their ability to serve as therapeutics, it's just their use as research tools. And these are very powerful ways of probing the brain and exploring the nature of consciousness, exploring a number of questions. And in fact, people have used the term outside of psychedelics of neurotheology, like the idea that there may be an underlying basis for spiritual, and I don't even want to say thinking or beliefs, but spirituality might be a better way of saying it. There might be an underlying basis to spiritual experience that goes across religion, across cultures, across languages. We know this psychologically, and we've known that actually. William James, most people have heard of the founder of American psychology 100 years ago. He was an early person who was fascinated with this, the idea that the really strong accounts of spiritual experiences across time, across cultures, whether it's a Muslim from this century or a Jewish person from that century, a Christian from that, a Buddhist from here, this part of the world, they seem to share a lot of core similarities, a sense of oneness, a sense of having transcendent time and space, a sense of ineffability. In other words, no matter how much I describe this, I'm never fully putting this into words. It is beyond words. A sense of gnosis. In other words, there's a self-validating aspect to the experience. It's as real or more real than everyday reality. An overwhelming sense of positivity. So these core characteristics seem to pervade very salient spiritual experiences from all of these different centuries, from different languages. And in fact, that's been well studied in the psychology of religion. There's a debate. It's called perennialism. And there's a debate in terms of whether the religions all stem from a core mystical experience of this nature, but there are some that believe that's the case. Of course, some of these questions there may ultimately never be a question. They're buried in not just history, but prehistory. But nonetheless, it's like the psychology is further along than the biology. But biologically, we now, especially with the psychedelics, have an emerging science of seeing how those experiences unfold. Because what's fascinating with psychedelics is the experiences that people often have on psychedelics that fit this category of mystical experience appear indistinguishable by their features from the non-drug experiences of this nature that have been described throughout the centuries. And now scientists have been interested in those experiences, and they're more common than people realize. It's not uncommon for someone to have one of those types of experiences once or twice in their life, which is amazing enough. Like, again, not from drugs, but just out of the blue. One feels like in this incredible flow state, like they're one with the universe, etc. But then it's quite another thing to say, scientifically, in terms of what you can do with it, to say, okay, let's schedule that experience for next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Now, all of a sudden, you can have prospective research where we can look before and after and look to see whether it was just a expectation effect by comparing it to placebo or another compound. And then we can delve in, like we can have you do that while you're in an fMRI magnet. You're probably not going to be in a fMRI if this happens like once or twice at a random time in your life. So it opens up so in this realm of neurotheology, of the idea that there may be, and I can't say that this is scientific consensus that this is true, but it's at least a probe into this potential idea that there is a biology that underlies spirituality across people. Because it's amazing. You look back across cultures, across time, and it's like humans do certain things. They interact in social groups. They eat together. They do that. They raise their kids. They teach. They do. And they transcend cultures. And one of the things people do is like form religions and have spiritual experiences. It seems that probably served an evolutionary function, and there's probably biology behind that. And maybe these psychedelics are kind of just turning up the gain. And you guys are probably in a studio, and it's like you've got all the audio controls. You can turn the gain up, a pot switch. You can, I kind of think of this as turning up the gain on that biological system. The potential of having one of those types of experiences when you load someone up on a high dose of a psychedelic.
Well, the Manson family started a religion on LSD.
Oh, they did.
Interesting.
Right, which is a good example of the dark side, and the example that the so much of what you get is not just inherent in the drug, but so much part of the set and setting. And there can be a dark side to, like any other powerful tool. And it may have been that the drug use facilitated a sense of group cohesion within their group, even though they had this maniacal, twisted by his leadership, this maniacal vision of, how they related to other people and what they needed to go do. But so you have, just like spirituality itself, you can look to any number of examples of, there's countless, the Branch Davidians, any number of examples where this kind of basic tendency towards spirituality is taken in a really perverse direction.
Well, now I got the blueprint to form my own cult.
Doc, we had a question from one of our fans before we got here, and they wanted to know: is there anybody studying the effect on people with neurodiversity like autism and psychedelics?
Oh, so the closest thing is MDMA, which is a type of psychedelic. It's usually not considered a classic psychedelic, but Alicia Danforth and Charlie Grobe are conducting some research on autistic people on the autism spectrum with social anxiety, which apparently is a lot of the quality of life issues that can come with the autism spectrum is the social anxiety that comes with it. And so they have reported positive results in helping people long term through an MDMA experience. So yeah, there is. It's early, but it actually looks promising that MDMA could be used to help people with certain aspects of autism.
Oh, it's amazing. We're just at the tip of the iceberg, I feel like, for all of this information. As far as like your scientific circles go, because I love your passion. Like you can hear it in your voice. You're fired up. It's firing us up. We get fired up about it all the time. Are you familiar with Terence McKenna? Real quick, inner question there.
Terence McKenna, never heard of him.
Because I was like, man, this guy is going to be our new Terence McKenna. I love this guy. But in the scientific world,
I've probably spent too much time listening to Terence McKenna.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
Audio clips, and I've read a couple of his books too.
Food of the Gods.
Yeah, Invisible Landscape, and Food of the Gods.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, are you considered like the mushroom scientist or whatever? Or your other scientist buddies like, oh man, I'm trying to cure cancer over here. You're messing around with mushrooms, buddy.
Or do you use synthesized psilocybin?
Yeah, how does that work?
So we use synthesized. So I'd have to say, there's a number of researchers. So it's a great field to be in because it is growing. We are in our infancy, but it's growing, and I have a number of great universities. It's a handful of labs across the world, but it's growing. And so anyway, just to describe kind of the landscape, but it's synthetic psilocybin that we've done our research with. There are potential questions actually that one could look at comparing synthetic psilocybin to mushrooms. That's actually research that we could do if there was the funding present for it. There's probably there's a stronger case to be made. It may not be the case when you look at something like cannabis, it's a pretty clear case that there's more going on than just THC. So you have cannabidiol and in fact a number of other psychoactives that do make whole plant cannabis different than just THC. There's less of a case to be made, even though we should do the research, and we don't really. This is kind of just extrapolating from what's known. That's probably not the case with mushrooms because you have such low levels of other compounds. So there's things like baeocystine and norbaeocystine, which are also present in mushrooms, but they're at such low levels they probably don't contribute much to the effects, but they could. It's an unknown. There's also psilocin, which is psilocybin after it's lost its phosphoryl. It's dephosphorylated. But that's essentially the same as psilocybin because psilocybin, it's pretty convincing, the science on this, that it's immediately converted to psilocin in the body anyway. So the mushroom contains psilocin and psilocybin, but all of the psilocybin is turned right to psilocin when it's in the body anyway, and then it's always psilocin that's hitting the brain receptors. So that might be too much in the weeds, but
no, that's actually I actually had psilocin pulled up on my phone. I was going to ask you about that.
I've never seen Craig smile so hard in all of my life.
A lot of people get starstruck. I've been rambling with all of my questions. A lot of people are starstruck by musicians,
pop stars.
And I'm sitting here talking to a psychedelic researcher, choking on my words.
He's dying
trying to figure out what I want to ask you because I want to ask you a million things.
I can tell his brain is just cooking.
I'm actually fried right now. And so one thing I was
we may be
wondering
doing our own
is
research right now.
when they look at things like, Amanita muscaria or something like that, where they say it's really not psychedelic until it's broken down, like with ibotenic acid. Are there studies being done with that where they kind of extract medicine from like an Amanita muscaria and then have it gone through a process like that?
There's really no research into the psychoactive effects of Amanita muscaria, and so it's just ibotenic acid is the presumed primary active agent. There's really the most interesting readings I've had on that are from Jonathan Ott. He has a book, Pharmacotheon, which is just it's a massive volume on all sorts of, for more of a kind of anthropological, kind of in the field, taking these things with the natives, so to speak. He and a lot of other folks have described it as like, that's not really a psychedelic. They'll say, actually, one mushroom foraging expert, I think Larry Evans, described it this way. Oh yeah, Amanita muscaria. Yeah, that's when you wake up in 2 days in the woods, forgetting how you got there, having pissed on yourself, and wondering what's going on. You want to call that a psychedelic?
That sounds like a blast.
That sounds like Jim Beam.
I do that every weekend.
The Jim Beam mushroom. That's a good one.
I know we're running out of time with you. One of the questions that I just tried to smash into that first one, and you were talking about how it is a growing field. With these peers, we know there's groups like MAPS out there, but can we be encouraged that there is a lobby of intellectuals like yourself that are, speaking to our politicians, our lawmakers? I know Denver's got a decriminalization movement coming up. Is that something that you're seeing happen throughout academia?
So there's people that there's various points of contact, and so, for example, I'm going to be down there talking with folks at the FDA a week from now. They have some questions on psychedelics, and they're seeing more and more applications. So there are various points of it's getting more and more represented at mainstream scientific meetings, often which are also attended by people from NIH and FDA and DEA, and so there's a lot of points of formal contact. So, and I think Michael Pollan's book, Changing Your Mind, has kind of turned a lot of I didn't mean that by now, turned a lot of people on to just the idea that there's a legitimate science to this area, and this isn't about and a science that is well rooted in recognizing, like, yes, there are risks like all other powerful tools and like all medications or drugs, but we know enough about those risks, and we know enough about the safeguards you can implement to address those risks. And there's so much to be learned, and there's so much potential to help people with disorders like depression and addiction, where we need so much room for improvement. So I think it's all very promising. I think, there are, there was a senator who, through one of the scientific organizations, APA, I was contacted a couple of weeks ago about someone from a senator's staff who was interested in asking the NIH director about psychedelics and why we aren't funding any. So they kind of got my input on that. So I think there's all sorts of reason to be encouraged, in that there are some points of contact with the powers to be to kind of open up and really see how these tools can be used to benefit society when applied appropriately.
Dr. Johnson, I'm so fired up. This is one of the greatest interviews. I could talk to you for days. You're probably just about done with me. That's usually about a half an hour.
You haven't gotten to my boring stories yet. Just like
I'll eat your boring stories up. Okay, sir. I want to know, how can people like us get involved? I know MAPS has like a mailing list or whatever you can do to get involved with them. Is there anything we can do to maybe become guinea pigs for you?
So you can check out. You can check out. We revamped our website here at Johns Hopkins for our psychedelic research recently. So if you check out hopkinspsychedelic.org, you can see the current studies we have going on, and if you might want to check out volunteering for a study,
My man.
You can see what studies we've done in the past. You can see You can sign up for a regular newsletter. So yeah, check us out at hopkinspsychedelic.org.
I'm in love.
This is great.
I'm in love
I'm
with
not
this show,
even
man.
kidding. Like, I'm embarrassed by how I haven't been able to get anything out. I would love to have you on the show again and follow up with you. Dr. Johnson, thank you so much for joining us. You've been a wealth of knowledge, man. It's awesome.
You're welcome. I'd love to do it again.
Sounds great.
It's been fun.
Thanks so much. That was so awesome. He's so awesome. I'm such a bumbling idiot in front of people that I truly idolize.
You were
I'm like, this guy's carrying the torch.
No, I know.
We need these doctors. I believe in this so much. Like we talk a lot about cannabis. We talk about how it can help people, and I truly believe that psilocybin and different hallucinogens can cure a mental illness problem that I think is running rampant throughout the world.
No more commercials, right?
And I just think it's
Yes, we do have to. We are up against it.
We are up against it. We are up against it.
And I tried to get
I
that
like how,
across.
like, even if
trying
you
to sneak-
whisper,
trying to sneak
Get it
past him.
across, and then Craig stopped talking. And
I know. I appreciate it. It's great.
That was
gotta love the technical aspect of some of these shows.
But I believe that psilocybin. I believe psilocybin is going to be just as healing as cannabis in a totally different area of health.
A deep healing,
totally
sir.
different area of health. We have there's very much a mental health crisis going on as the world becomes more populated. Who are we in that little world, in that great big world? What are we? Well, I think this is one of the things that's going to help us out. Hearing a Johns Hopkins professor talk about it is so inspiring. Let's jump to break.
He's into it too.
He's totally into it. What was it? Hopkinspsychedelic.org.
Yeah, we can be guinea pigs, guys. Without Lifetime Roofing and James Carlton and Momed Canco and Rose Extermination, we couldn't have interviews like this. So please help them.
I think I just lost you there for a second.
That's cool.
Guys, let's
It
jump to
wasn't.
break real quick. On the other side, we'll give you some streaming picks and maybe a little password to the Cotillion. This is Hoosier
Oh.
Sophisticate on WGNU 920 AM. We'll catch you on the other side. You can get an insurance quote anywhere. What people are really looking for is someone to help manage the risk of everyday life. And that's exactly what James Carlton State Farm does. He's also dangerously handsome. He has a dream in his eyes.
James Carlton has the best customer service in the game. You'll never get a voicemail, and you'll always get a great back rub.
He has the softest hands. A strong sense of community is important to who he is as an agent. From local school sponsorships to sandbagging during floods, it's paramount to be a part of the community. We love the cut of his jib.
Guys, call 314-961-4800. Find him online at carltoninsurance.net.
We wish he was our dad.
Hey there, Krager.
Well, hey, Steve.
How you doing, buddy?
Man, I've been pretty good.
Well, that's good. Hey, you heard anything about them newfangled hemp oils they got now?
I just don't know where to find a good one.
Well, I find the best full spectrum hemp oil from MomedCanco.com.
Where?
I get it from MomedCanco.com.
Is it expensive?
It don't cost 2 kittens whiskers. And if you enter HOSO in the promo box, you're going to get yourself 15% off.
Buddy, it sounds like we're squatting tall cotton.
Darn right we are.
Where can I find them?
You can find them online, MomedCanco.com, Missouri Medical Cannabis Company.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah.
Lifetime.
Jill.
It lasts a lifetime.
Come on.
You last a lifetime.
And just go Google it. I wanna let those shingles down, girl, for you. I wanna let those shingles down, boy, for you. I'm gonna do some siding, get you excited. James Hardy siding. Google it.
For a lifetime. You know I make your neighbors cry. Boo. Cause we tell all the leaks go bye. And you know we all do the side.
James Hardy, boy, yeah.
Guys, Lifetime Roofing. They're the best roofers in the game, best customer service. LifetimeSTL.com. Google them.
A voice for all of St. Louis. We are WGNU 920 AM and 106.9 FM.
Now, the universe has been going on for an incredible long time. And so, really, a satisfactory theory of the universe has to be one that's worth betting on. If you make a theory of the universe which isn't worth betting on, why bother? Just commit suicide. But if you want to go on playing the game, you've got to have an optimal theory.
What's here? At first, they have to find them. What's here? At first, they have to find them. What's here? At first, they have to find them.
Hoosier Sophisticate on WGNU with your hosts, Greg Kohler and Stephen Elgin. Oh, yeah.
What's here?
Seth, I like your twisty little dark brain.
This is the best show. I'm sorry, guys. And the comments, let me get through them because everyone's like, great interview. That's the best interview I've ever heard. Oh my God, you guys are awesome. Steve really killed this interview. And that's a real quote.
It's from Missy.
We have so many quotes. I want to get to this quote by Michael. But I think we have so many. I don't even know if I can get back up to the top. We have so many quotes, so many comments on our Facebook Live. You can catch us out on Facebook, Mycelial Media on YouTube, HoosierSophisticate.com. I'm going to try to read these comments. Craig, keep going. There's so many. I'm
actually, I think we got somebody on line 1 with a comment. It's our buddy. He hasn't called in for a while.
Oh my God.
No.
I know. I told him it's cool.
No.
Alex Jones, everybody.
Repent now. I know your mustache is cool. You got little gold frame glasses.
Had nothing to do
Scare
with
me so bad.
anything.
You scum. Ooh, he'd love it. Those are the type of people that go to the cops in
Yep.
Oklahoma and say, "We'll kill your wives if you expose we did this."
Did you have a question?
And the cops all just roll over to it. Oh, you got a mustache. I'll just worship you. Oh, you got a mustache.
Actually
it's
true.
okay.
That's true, actually.
Your demonic little mustaches. Nothing against mustaches.
Take it.
Just all these cops
Nothing
are
against
little
mustaches. You just
homoerotic
attacked
gang of
mustaches for 30 seconds.
mustaches.
We're done taking calls. We're done taking calls
As
because he'll
a-
lie and say he's somebody else.
As a once proudly mustachioed man, I felt attacked there for quite a while, actually.
He really went off on mustaches.
Guys, I'm on tilt because we have so many comments. I can't
Give me
get
a
to
couple of them.
Michael.
Just pick one.
That was amazing. Great interview. Jen, what's up? Here we go. Josh says, I had a dream the other night about one of our LS swinger friends. She has a tattoo on her waist with flowers and a couple small items. Why do I feel like I should maybe not be reading this? In my dream, it was a series of small squares and rows. I headed down there, but then started counting the squares. I woke up counting squares. I was sad. That's a dream. If we're talking about real dreams, you told me to read something. You told me to read something. I read it. I didn't read it beforehand. Steve, that Coke depletes your magnesium. Tiffany, off my magnesium level.
Very acidic drink you're having there, Steve.
Good
Now,
Lord.
Michael chimes in with, I've had tons of psychedelic experiences. One led me to breaking into a pie shop on the ground that I had to understand the eternal existence of the universe.
With pies?
Yeah, apparently he broke in and he into a pie store.
Did you know that if you wanted to buy tickets to the Cotillion, you could go to the website, but you're going to need a password. And in all caps, it says, "Get the coughing under control." That's a joke for all of the patrons of the first Cotillion. If you want a chance at the pre-sale, just get the coughing under control.
I don't get it.
Zach.
Yes. And that's just for us. That's a joke for us. For everybody that was at the Cotillion.
Yeah,
for
people
everybody
love inside
that
jokes.
wants to come to the Cotillion this year. If you want to go there, you're going to emphatically type, "Get the coughing under control."
Really? Wow. So you guys have heard it. The Cotillion, we had some big news on it. It's in a new area. Is that?
Oh, buddy, I've got quite the journey laid out for all of us. I've got quite the little tract of land dedicated to this, and it's going to be a group of the best friends making the best time in the best environment that you can possibly imagine. So get your tickets now. Click on the Hoosier Cotillion link at HoosierSophisticate.com. Get the coughing under control, all caps, and you can go buy your tickets right now.
Let it run.
Steve's the Who guy.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Diane. Happy birthday to you.
We had
Happy birthday!
happy birthday to everybody. Now we got to do it for everyone. So thanks
a lot for roping us into that
W.
one.
Anthony.
Sorry.
Appreciate it. Guilt trip. I'm going to give that bottle of CBD, the vape juice, to Michael Brooker. He had an unbelievable quote earlier. Guys, the interactions have been phenomenal tonight. Again, support our sponsors. Craig, can you tell us what the Cotillion might be like? What for some of our fans who don't know, who might be wanting to buy tickets?
Yeah, man.
Is it like the Bull float trip?
Not even kind of. This is a trip where we all kind of go down and we unplug from the world. We plug into each other, sometimes several times. Steve's got a little acoustic guitar. He's sitting around the campfire. He plays a little ditty or two. And then guess what? Old Jim Bob over here happens to tickle the strings a little bit himself. So then he picks up the pace. But really, Steve's pretty much, the main
Don't forget that. If you can play any instrument, you're not welcome.
We invite everybody to come
You're
out
not welcome
and
if you're better
sing
than
at the
me.
top of your lungs and dance unabashedly throughout the woods in a place that is teeming with wildlife. It's a beautiful little stretch of Missouri. On Saturday morning, we're going to get up, we're going to jump in some rafts, and we're going to float down the Big Piney River. We're going to float between the bluffs, and we're going to look at all the eagles flying overhead. Check it all out.
I like
it's
it.
a good
I know.
time.
It's the Indian name.
You ever been fishing down in the Bob?
It's the Native American name for it. Please be respectful. No, when you took me down there for the first time, it was amazing. Clear water. It's not the Hoosier. It's not Ozark Outdoors. I don't even know if that's a place anymore. We do get a little wild. Craig, I commend you on your ability to kind of lead the group in a way to kind of create space and create a vibe for everybody. When you come up there, maybe you don't know anybody. I'll specifically call out Cynthia. We love her. She shows up. We could tell she was kind of maybe a little nervous. Everyone helped her get all of her stuff from her car to the campsite. It was such a beautiful experience to see.
Just organic.
Yes. This is a campsite filled with friends who maybe become family. Like, it is beautiful people all kind of on. It's a cult. God, I'm sorry. I'm getting there. It's a sex cult.
Yeah, it's Sparta.
There is maybe we could reenact that on the bluff, on the bluff. You could kick me off, but we won't do that. But it's going to be a heck of a time. Get the coughing under control.
Get the coughing under control. All caps. Figure it out from there. There's only so many tickets sold, and if they're all sold even before they go public, I'm sorry, but we're going to reward the people that listen to the show that have been waiting on the passcode. So it's an exclusive party. I don't know what to tell you. It's a cotillion. It's a ball in the woods, and it's a Hoosier good time.
Are we missing anything? Do we have any news?
Yeah,
and
man, we do
notes?
have news.
We got news and notes we got to get
Tomorrow.
to. What do we forget?
Tomorrow from noon to 5.
Can't wait, baby.
VFW 3944. There is a free 420 event. This is Cannabis 101 for anybody that might potentially seek out being a patient or try to be a caregiver for someone at home, or just wants to know the ins and outs of the law. Lyndall Fraker from the DHSS is going to be there. Our buddy Blake Bell is going to talk. Our friend Tiffany Jones. She's gonna come talk about the ECS, the endocannabinoid system. George Nolan's gonna come talk about home grow. And then our
will be running around.
Tom Mundell will definitely be there. And then our buddy Chris Haney is going to give a talk about fitness and cannabis. And then also just what we can maybe do to help end this war on. We're losing more veterans at home than we could ever imagine losing overseas. We lose 22 veterans a day. And what can we do to change it? I don't think we don't think cannabis is the catch-all. Cannabis just might be something that helps somebody. It might be one of many tools, right? We talk about doing yoga, doing mixed martial arts, becoming a part of a mushroom foraging club, just getting a sense of community.
Okay.
Just a sense of community.
All right. Yeah.
Softball team last time, but mushroom foraging club this time.
Why not?
I like where your head's
I'm
at,
thinking
though.
Yoga and mushroom.
The morals right now.
I went and visited. I got some morel I ate some morel mushrooms yesterday,
Morels.
and they were just they're so good.
Are they? I've never had fresh
like
ones.
tastes like chicken.
Really?
Yeah, you just saute.
You always say that, though.
No, like
People are
it's
obsessed with those things.
yeah. I mean, the texture.
They're
is,
the Game of Thrones of fungi.
The texture
Very
is
good analogy.
the
Very
texture
good.
is very meat-like. It's
I
very
don't
good.
know. I don't
Very-
know if something's
very
meat-like,
meat-like.
but I know it's not meat.
That's a weird thing.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing. You got any plans for 420 afterwards?
You know, I've got a.
Why would I celebrate?
There's-
I mean, what's to celebrate?
428, boys.
There's a
It's
lot
just
of
just
events
April
going
20th,
on.
Hitler's birthday.
Can I
Is that,
gush?
is that where you're celebrating,
Can
Steve?
I
Birthday
gush all
comment.
over you guys?
Yeah, please.
Can I
Yeah.
gush real quick?
Hopefully.
The Blues game. Okay.
Embarrassing.
Last night. What oh my god.
I was so happy for you.
It was such a beautiful thing. From being irate in the first 12 seconds, we go down. To them scoring another one, which it seemed like an easy, like no one gets to the front of the net that easy in the playoffs. We let this guy Barbashev. You're just gonna watch him come through. Gotta get hard in the dirty areas.
You got to get in the dirty areas. You got to bang bodies.
I fell
But-
asleep. It was 2-1.
but to
15
co-
minutes left.
to
I was like,
come-
oh, they're losing.
Oh, you even waited till 2-1. Jeez.
I passed out.
Okay. So, we ended up coming back with 15 seconds left.
Which is
Schwartzy.
always so great.
Schwartzy, and this is not for the sports fan. Even if you don't even pay attention to sports, whatever.
It was a spot on miracle.
He has been struggling this season.
Mightily.
Had a killer last year and has been working hard all year. You can never say the guy doesn't work hard. You can never say, oh, he's just out there mailing it in. He just hitting posts. Get a hat trick, get an empty net goal, and then go goalless for 20 games. And you're like, and this guy was supposed to be a stud this year. I would have put him top 20 players last year. Like he was so good and only getting better. So he just never given up, never given up. That's kind of the name of the game.
Has he been hurt?
Yeah, he has. But, with hockey, you kind of never know. Imagine
Upper
taking
body injury.
Imagine
lower
taking a
body.
slap shot off the
Oh,
knee,
dude. Yeah.
and that's kind of just always
That's
bruised.
that's just how it's supposed to be.
That's like Louis C.K. The
walking
doctor's like,
callus.
that's just your ankle now. And Louis C.K.'s like, what? He's like, no, that's just it for you. Like,
Right.
that's just it from here on out. So for him to score that goal, a goal that if you give him 100 attempts, maybe he scores it once or twice with a goalie in net. Like the way the goalie was positioned, it went under his arm and it was out of midair. So I'm talking to Oliver this morning and he went to bed before the game was over. And I always give him the recap. And I'm like, okay, here we go. We're doing the things. He's not interested. He's doing the thing. No, he's into it the next morning. And I'm like, okay, this is great. I'm showing him the replays. And I swear, Craig, I'm the worst. As I'm breaking this down about, Short doesn't give up, man. He doesn't, and I hear
Choke it up.
I'm choking up. I can't
God
even
love you.
get the words out because you can hear John Kelly and Darren Pang, their voices. Darren Pang's yell. Go listen to the audio of
Is
Darren
his voice
Pang.
cracked?
He's like,
Is it break?
"Ah, ah." And John Kelly goes at the end. He goes, "This is crazy." That was his call. He just goes like it reminded me of Mugatu. Like I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. He's like, "This is crazy." He didn't even know. And then we win a face-off because a little part of me was like, "There's 15 seconds left. I could see them scoring here." But we came out, and the moral of that story to my son and to all of us is like, man, never give up because Jaden Schwartz goes, that's the greatest goal I've ever scored.
System hacked. Warning. System hacked. Countdown sequence initiated.
What a show, Craig.
Evacuation. Security breach detected. Your intelligence is under attack. Extracting dark matter. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us again. We've had so much fun today. It is a blast when you guys are interacting with us.
I couldn't get to all the comments. 148 comments.
It's a beautiful little stream here. thank you so much to Dr. Matthew Johnson, Johns Hopkins University researcher. I want to find I was taking notes during that interview.
Like a fiend.
Steve was like, man, you're pretty excited there. I've never seen you write so much. I don't think I've written that much in an entire year. And I want to get all of these people on the show. I want to hear all of their stories. I want all of them to break it down. I want to make this as a regular of a thing to talk about as, how the weather is outside. You guys make that possible. You guys add a little bit of normalcy to this whole thing. You guys are interested in the information, and we want to bring it to you. I want to thank our sponsors, momedcanco.com. And our Hoso at checkout, get 15% off everything site-wide. They got all kinds of new products, peanut butter, vape juice, massage oil. Go check it out.
Massage oil works.
The massage oil works. James Carlton State Farm, carltoninsurance.net, 314-961-4800.
Wish he was my dad.
He will make your life better, period. Lifetime Roofing and Renovation.
Exterior roof, roofing, roof.
That's how it goes. Just go Google them, lifetimestl.com. And our newest sponsors, Spiders and some mice. Spiders and some mice. Oh, yeah, spiders and some mice. Rose Extermination. Give them that number, Steve.
314-845-6101.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week. We'll have a little bit of fun. Tune into Hoosier Sophisticate. Go get your tickets for the Cotillion. Get the coughing under control. We love you, St. Louis. Be well.
You're listening to WGNU St. Louis, operating on 920 AM and K295CQ on 106.9 FM.
WGNU now concludes its broadcast day. We thank you so much for making us a part of your day and hope you enjoyed the broadcast you heard. Please be sure to join us again tomorrow beginning at 6 a.m. You can always hear us at 920 AM or 106.9 FM and also streaming live at WGNU920am.com. Until then, we hope you have a good night.